Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial and surprisingly strategic geographic areas in the world, the Gulf of Mexico. Or, as some politicians in the United States are now trying to rename it, the. But why? Why is this body of water so important? Why does it matter so much to both the United States and Mexico? And what's really behind this sudden push to claim it under a new name? Let's start with the basics. The Gulf of Mexico is a large ocean basin located between the southern United States, eastern Mexico, and western Cuba. At first glance, it might look like just another part of the sea, but in reality, it's one of the most economically and environmentally significant regions on Earth. For the United States, the Gulf of Mexico is a powerhouse of energy production. About 95% of America's offshore oil production comes directly from the Gulf. In 2023 alone, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the Gulf produced over 1.7 million barrels of crude oil per day. That's not a small number. It's a critical pillar of the country's energy infrastructure. Without it, fuel prices would spike, supply chains would stumble, and economic pressure would ripple across every sector of American life. And it's not just oil. The Gulf is also a major source of natural gas, delivering over 3 trillion cubic feet annually. That's enough to power millions of homes and businesses across the United States, especially in the South and Midwest. It's safe to say, when it comes to energy, the Gulf of Mexico isn't just a resource, it's a lifeline. Now let's talk shipping and trade. Along the Gulf's northern edge lie some of the busiest and most vital ports in the United States. The Port of Houston, Port of New Orleans, Port of Tampa, these are economic engines. Every year, more than 1 billion tons of cargo pass through these ports. Crude oil, chemicals, grains, vehicles, machinery, you name it. If it moves in bulk, there's a good chance it moves through the Gulf. So what about Mexico? Is the Gulf just as important to them? Absolutely. In fact, the Gulf is critical to Mexico's fishing industry, oil exports, and coastal tourism. The Bay of Campeche, on Mexico's side of the Gulf, holds some of its most valuable oil fields. Pemex, Mexico's state-owned oil company, relies heavily on production in this area to keep the national economy afloat. On top of that, tens of thousands of Mexican fishermen earn their livelihood from the Gulf's rich waters. From shrimp to snapper, the Gulf supports a thriving marine ecosystem that feeds both economies and countless families. Any disruption, whether environmental or political, affects both countries deeply. So why is the U.S., particularly some political voices on the right, pushing to rename the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America? This move, championed by certain lawmakers and strongly supported by former President Donald Trump, is more symbolic than practical. By renaming the Gulf, supporters say they're asserting U.S. dominance and ownership over a body of water they believe the U.S. secures, protects, and maintains. The argument is, we defend the Gulf, we control the shipping, we extract the resources. Why should it be called Mexico's Gulf? But this renaming effort is controversial for a reason. Critics, including many historians, diplomats, and even members of Congress, argue that the name Gulf of Mexico has been in use for over 400 years. It appears on international maritime maps, is recognized by the United Nations, and is part of global geography curricula. Changing its name unilaterally could strain international relations, not just with Mexico, but with other nations that depend on accurate and standardized naming conventions in trade, law, and diplomacy. Moreover, this isn't just a linguistic debate, it's part of a broader political narrative about American nationalism and identity. By asserting new names over long-established regions, some leaders seek to project strength, reclaim perceived dominance, and rewrite symbolic parts of history. But in doing so, they risk igniting tensions with allies and undermining the shared stewardship that the Gulf requires. After all, the Gulf of Mexico doesn't belong to just one nation. It's bordered by 3 countries and it depends on cooperation, on disaster response, environmental protection, and maritime law enforcement. Hurricanes don't check passports, oil spills don't respect borders. And here's another thing, the Gulf is facing rising threats from climate change. Warmer waters, stronger storms, rising sea levels, all of these put coastal cities like Houston, New Orleans, and Veracruz at growing risk. The real battle isn't over what to name the Gulf, it's about how to protect it. So in the end, the Gulf of Mexico, regardless of what you call it, is a zone of immense importance. To rename it may sound bold, but the real strength lies in collaboration, not claims. The future of the Gulf doesn't depend on a new title. It depends on how we manage its resources, protect its ecosystems, and share its benefits. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global politics, history, and current affairs. Until next time, stay informed. Follow the channel for more stories.